Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Ollie Show, where we will have special guests, hot topics, and unexpected surprises. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Ollie Show. Today, I'd like to invite you to open your hearts and clear your minds as we dive into our topic, 9/11. This topic right here is one that is so memorable for so many people. I've invited some very special guests on the show just to be able to help us remember exactly what they were doing and just have a general conversation as we remember it on this day. As we tape this show, it is 9/11. So put your hands together and help me to welcome EK, Emerald, and Tanasha. So, Tanasha, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Let's back up just a little bit, even before we go into 9/11 on that day. Do you remember really what you were doing before all of that occurred?
Before all of that occurred, let's see. I actually was a new mom, and I was just getting back into the workforce. Mm-hmm. And I had applied at a few places in a mortgage company, and also started substitute teaching.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So in the interim while I was waiting on those other job offers. So yeah, I was just getting back into the workforce, and after being a mom and being able to stay at home for a little while with my son.
Okay. EK, what about you? Do you remember what you were doing before 9/11 occurred, year 2001?
The day of, right?
Let's just start with.
I was visiting my mom and visiting with her and relaxing. So that's basically what I was doing.
Okay, all right.
You know.
And Emerald?
I was in school. I was at the time I was living in Washington D.C. Mm-hmm. and I was going to Duke Ellington, which is a school for performing arts. So shout out to my alma mater. But yeah, that's what I was doing. I was going for vocal performance, and in the morning we had academics. So that's what I was doing. I was focusing on academics, and I think, yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with you since you're already talking. How did you hear about the planes?
I heard about the planes when they shut down our school. Okay. We went into complete lockdown. Yeah. Because we were in DC proper. So where Ellington is located, it's 36 and R. Yeah. So kind of the exact same vicinity as Georgetown. So we're right there across the bridge from Virginia. The entire city went on lockdown. Mm-hmm. So there was no in and out. Mm-hmm. That's how we heard about it. I just didn't know what happened. I just knew that we were on lockdown. In high school, you can be, maybe there's a bomb threat. It could be anything. And so we asked, and that's when they told us that some planes crashed into the Pentagon.
Okay. And EK, how did you hear about it?
I was actually, as I was talking to my mother, I glanced at the television and saw the news, and I saw the planes crashing. So I didn't know what was going on. I just kind of looked, and we kept talking. Then when I turned it up, I'm like, wow. So we just started focusing on that, like, what's really going on?
Yeah, because it's not like we got, now we have these phones. And, back then, we didn't have the type of phones where all these Amber Alerts and just things just occur or whatever. So, yeah, I see what you mean. Right. And how did you hear about it?
So the day of, actually, I was driving to the school that I was substituting for, and I was listening to the radio as well. And so that's when I heard it, and I had to stay in the car for a little while because I was not certain what was really happening and what they were saying. Yeah. And so I took that in a little bit before I had to actually go into the school. And then we were met with not telling us not to talk to the students about it. And so we had to, I had to gather myself and figure out how I was going to navigate through the rest of the day without having the students coming and talking to me about it. Because the school district was, they wanted us to allow the parents to be able to talk to the students about it.
Okay. So when you heard about it, Tanasha, What was your original reaction?
I was stunned. I was confused at first because I didn't know what was really happening, and so yeah, I was stunned sitting in the car, like, oh my God, what is about to happen? What just happened? What's going to happen to our nation, and what does this really mean?
Okay, okay. And Emerald, what about you?
I was actually thinking the exact same thing because here I am, a senior in high school, and I moved across the country to come live my dream and train as a jazz singer, and I didn't know if we were gonna, I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if, we were being taken over. I didn't know what was gonna happen. I was terrified.
Okay, and what about you, EK?
It was shocking. Still trying to figure out what's going on, and I had a friend that stays in New York, so I was immediately trying to call them and couldn't get an answer, so kind of confused. Like the ladies were just like, what's really going on?
Okay, okay. And I want to tell you something. It's like even with me, I'll just share a little bit of my story as well. I mean, when I was in school, I think I was in 6th grade at the time when it happened. I know that tells my age then, but yeah, it was like, wow. I mean, I remember my 6th grade of one of my, I think it was like the English teacher. She came in and she shared with us what it was, and at that time we were like, okay, all right. I mean, still not really fully understanding anything that's occurring right now. And so as the day went on, and now you're hearing more and more, we talk about what's trending, that right there started trending throughout as far as the entire school. And then even, you go home and now you're seeing things on the news or whatever. I thought that I was just like, okay, so maybe war is about to get ready to take place over here. And I mean, it did occur, but luckily it did not occur while we were here as far as in the U.S. But those were my original thoughts with all of it. But one thing I did want to ask each of you is, so now looking at where we were and your thoughts of when 9/11 did occur, it's changed so much. We'll just say over it's been 20 years today. Today makes 20 years that all of that has happened. Can you really relate or say that you knew anyone that maybe they didn't deal with it personally, but they knew someone else that dealt with it personally? Any of you?
That lost someone?
Yeah, that lost someone.
Yeah. So my aunt was in New York at the time, and it was really trying to get out of the city. She lost a lot of friends.
Okay.
Because if y'all remember, when the building collapsed, the entire city of New York, that entire downtown area was affected.
Yeah.
It was the debris, it was the smoke, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And my Aunt Blondie, I mean, we called to check on her. She couldn't even speak to us for a few days after and we were terrified. I have a lot of family in New York, and so it was really terrifying for us specifically. I mean, we were okay, but what about my aunts, my uncles, my cousins? What about all of them?
Right.
And they had a lot of people that died that they knew.
And you know what?
And they went through it themselves because they were in the city.
And the thing is, even though, let's say, for example, maybe you didn't know anyone that dealt with it, but do you remember a story of anyone? Because I mean, after that right there occurred, there was so many people that came forth to talk about, hey, I remember if I would have left, or if I would have went to work, or if this right here would have happened. Do you know of any stories that you might could share about just different things that you've heard that was just so interesting to like that right there, that was, God that kept you from being a part of something like that?
I heard a story of a particular lady heading to work but got sick and didn't go in that day. Yeah.
Okay.
And because they were sick, and then they saw what was happening, it was almost like, man,
So she knew that she could have probably been a part of it if it would have. Oh wow, wow.
right.
What about you?
Yeah, something similar to that. A friend of mine that I did not know then, but we've been have become acquainted now.
Yeah.
And she discussed that she was there during that time and was supposed to be in that building, and something would ever happen to detain her, and so she wasn't able to be there. And so, I'm grateful because she's a great lady to know, and I would, who knows what would have happened, if she would have been a survivor or not. But yeah, she was thankful that whatever that was that detained her, she was thankful that, she wasn't there, specifically. So, and then also another friend of mine who has a lot of family in New York, they didn't necessarily succumb to anything, but it was just the worry
Yeah.
about their family, the rest of their family being involved, but because they all lived in New York, but they were fine, so that was a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for them.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, so many touching stories. EK, looking back, why do you think 9/11 happened?
Well, of course, terrorists and trying to discredit and cause issues in America, you know. So those are some of the main reasons, you know.
What about you, Emerald?
I mean, for me, it was more or less about a threat to our country, letting them know that, letting us know that they had the power of fear.
Yeah.
And invoking the power of fear into people, it creates a level of control. And that's what that was the message that I was bringing, because again, we were in high school, and I remember really emphasizing through that thought pattern, when we look at things like how countries are taken over, and this is a terrorist group that, I mean, looking forward, I mean, this is how they operate. You know, it's not a specific culture, it's not a race, it's nothing about that. It is about a group of people that have a very illicit plan of invoking fear and causing, the effect would be a level of control that they have. We've seen a lot of episodes like that, even when we look at, you know, going back through the world wars that we've had. That was the exact same thing that caused that. It was a level of control invoked by fear. And so that's what was going through my mind, and thinking about one image that's coming through my head right now is people jumping from the building.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they just didn't have a choice. They were so terrified. There's no other choice.
So Tanasha, I mean, do you have anything that you want to add to that of why you feel like it's ever occurred?
Yeah, I agree with what they both said, but also politics, greed, people playing with people's lives
Yes.
for their own personal gain.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a horrific situation, but you know, one of our greatest tragedies of this nation. So, you know, we can get into that, you know, politics and all that, and how those things transpired after the fact, and people blaming each other. But one thing I would like to say, I don't know if this is how everyone came together, you know. After everything happened, though, that was, we've forgotten, you know, about that.
Yeah.
All walks of life, everyone who came together to help the distraught and everything, and we've just 20 years later, people forget. We forget quickly, and so the vision and everything that's happened today, or that's continued to happen after that, we just. It's sad to see all of this division, and then a tragedy like that brought everyone together, and you just saw the love, the pouring out of love and compassion across the nation, which we are not seeing today. And you know, if you could say there's beauty from ashes, then that is something out of the tragedy. You know, that was a beautiful thing, that at least we could remember that, and not necessarily the tragedy, but there was also some beauty that came out of that amongst all walks of life.
That's really good. All right, so we're going to take a commercial break, and everyone's stories have been very, very beautiful on today. And when we come back, then we're going to pick back up right where you left off at. We'll be back. Welcome back. Today we've been having a discussion about remembering 9/11, as we, so many celebrate 9/11 on today because it is September 11th. And you were sharing quite a bit of things, Tanasha, about, I guess we could say the negatives and the positives of it, but I wanted to pick back up on the positives of really what we could look at that occurred that was good that came out of some of that.
Well, yeah, like I was saying, the compassion, the overwhelming compassion that came across the nation, and we would see all the images on television, on the newscasts, on social media, how people were coming together and helping each other, no matter race, color, sex, whatever. We were all, and it was a beautiful thing, and it felt, even though that tragedy had happened, that to me and to a few people I know made us feel a little bit more safe that we as a country came together, that we like basically had each other's back when there was a tragedy such as that. And so just seeing the images and the compassion and people being a little bit more kind to each other during that time frame, which lasted for a little while. But then it faded off, you know, after things started getting back to normal.
Yeah,
you know, a little normal, if you could actually say that.
You know, it's so crazy that when we look at this right here, it's one of these type of things that it's kind of like a kid, you know, they'll get on the right track for so long. I mean, you got a little 3 or 4 year old, and then after that, then eventually they'll start trying mama and daddy again. After it's like you done gave them about maybe a mile to be able to go, and then it's like, you know, okay, now I got to chastise you again with something, and that's kind of how it seems like with our country now. What I've been told is, and even with history, I mean, I don't know if we have any history scholars inside of here, but with history, our country says that, I mean, history says that our country is a baby, pretty much. Compared to, if we look at China and all these different other countries, we're talking about barely a little over 200 and something years old. I mean, that's very, very young. And so that's why I want to compare it to a baby, because it's like we got so much so fast. I mean, with the freedom of just being able to do a lot of different things. And it's like we have these situations that occur from time to time. So what 9/11 happened, and you know, like you said, we had all these people that was going back to church. And I mean, was it that churches was full at one time with everyone just saying, hey, you know, we got to be there. 4 years later, then all of a sudden, then what was it? Katrina occurred, and then it was like come back together again, like you said. That was one, and so I'm just using that as an example. But yeah, that right there, that's a good point with what you just made about it.
We forget quickly.
Yeah, we definitely do. And so now looking back, we're 20 years in with all of this. And it makes you really want to wonder, I mean, do you feel like as if, this is going to be my next question for you, EK, do you feel like as if that we are better today?
Well, just connecting with what she said, it changes so quickly. We forget. I wouldn't say better.
Okay.
That we're going through other situations, you know, with the virus. So it's a work in progress, in my opinion, you know. And it goes back to home values and family values, and you know what's being taught to our youth as well as they grow up and value certain things in life.
Okay. What about you, Emerald?
I feel like there was a series of lessons that we learned on that day. And the lessons that we learned that day was also the value of camaraderie, because how many times have we come together effectively since then? You know what I mean? When we really need to. And that's something that, you know, does separate us from a lot of folks, is the tenacity that we have when we need each other. You know what I mean? When we really need each other. And that's not the last incident of terrorism that we've had since that day.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel like that day was a great learning tool for us, because it gave us the opportunity to go through next. If there were a situation that were similar or even tried to, because how many incidents tried to happen right after, it was like something tried to happen, we were ready, you know. Our effectiveness in combating that level of terrorism has gotten better.
Gotcha. So let's look at the younger generations just for a moment. What would you say that they need to know about 9/11?
Well, I was thinking while Emma was talking how it did change our world as far as all the security and that we had to go through, and it was very hard to adjust to that.
Yeah.
So we, you know, our lives changed, our generation lives changed on how we did things, but the younger generation, they were born into it. So there's nothing, so this is their norm, where we had to go through the adjustment periods of all of the security changes and challenges, and and feeling violated in our own, we went from feeling compassion and camaraderie for each other to feeling, oh, they're violating me a little bit, having to go through security at the airport, and so that's the norm for the younger generation. So just knowing that that one, I hate to say it, but you really don't know if you're safe.
Yeah.
Not having that feeling of safety that I grew up feeling, I felt safe growing up, and they may not feel that because this situation happened and changed how we do things, but it's their norm, as I was saying, that it's a part of history, and knowing that anything can happen, and that just being aware of other countries, other places, and not just basically being an individual or self, being able to be compassionate towards other people at all times, and just I don't know, just knowing that history, it definitely is important and part of our world, part of life.
Okay. And you know what? And even when you were talking and you made that statement about as far as the norm with the kids, because like I stated, I was in the 6th grade when it did occur. I had never flew on an airplane or anything up until I turned about maybe 18, 19 years old. So it was like when I did get on the plane, I mean, that was normal for me to, like you said, go through the security. I'm like, oh wow. I mean, so this is how we do it. I mean, and then they talked about taking off your shoes. What brought into my mind, I was trying to figure out, I was like, I saw some people that didn't have to do it, and it just brought a lot of questions of like, okay, so why is it that they don't have to versus I do have to? And it was mostly older people, that they had a certain age limit. I think it was over 70 something that you didn't necessarily have to do it. But it still just, put questions inside of my mind of why is it that all of this? I mean, I was there, I knew of what 9/11 did, but I didn't really understand all of this right until I started doing some studies about it. But for just saying norm, I mean, that's pretty much it. And so some of it I can see, I mean, all of it is beneficial. I'll definitely say that right there. But some of it I can see why they do it. The other things, it just put a lot of big questions inside of my mind. I remember one time I was on, where was I at? I think I was going to LA, and I had somebody that was traveling with me, and I told him, I said, hey, we're not allowed to, because at this point I had flew like probably about 15, 20 times. And I said, hey, we're not allowed to bring drinks and all this right here on there. And so we got ready to go through, and they didn't want to throw away the drink and gonna put it in my bag. And those people, they stopped, they stripped me. I mean, like pretty much, I mean, all the way up and down, left and right, to be able to see. And so when you talked about violated, I was like, okay, so this is what it feels like to be violated. Like, I mean, it was just an interesting situation that I did have to deal with. But
I found it inconvenience because my route to school went right through the Pentagon.
Oh, really?
And so, yes, because I had to take the bus to the metro.
Okay.
And then to the bus to get to school. So my whole route to school went from being an hour to 3 hours.
Wow.
So it's like.
So what happened when you guys got there? I mean, now that you know that, you may not have knew at first that had occurred, but what did y'all do when you got there?
We got to the Pentagon?
Yeah.
Well, that whole rail area was shut down. We just had to find a whole new route. So the way the system goes is you either go the route you want or you find another route. So we had to go through Alexandria and then go find another connection that went around somewhere else. So that way I could get where I needed to go until I could get to the intersection. But that's just how it was, because I lived where I lived at the time. Like I said, we just had to go through Pentagon, and so it was inconvenient. Honestly, I know that sounds selfish, but here I am, a senior in high school, And it was very inconvenient for me. I did not want to have to get up at 4 a.m. to get to school.
You was hungry all over again by the time you got there, right?
Yeah. I graduated in the process. Like.
So, Ike, what would you say your overall thoughts would be as far as like just closing with this topic about 9/11?
I'm an educator as well, and I teach the ed arts. And although I teach the ed arts, I showed some videos and things to my students, and just kind of get their take, go into their emotions and stuff like that. And and they asked a lot of questions, so it kind of taught some lessons. How she was saying about coming together. So just letting the students be aware, to be watchful and mindful, and to be grateful and thankful. Of course, with the security and all those measures, we may not like them, may be inconvenient, but it's needed, it's necessary, and there's a purpose for it. So, in closing, I would just say we just can't forget, and why should tragedy have to happen before we can come together?
Right,
and I think if we can keep that mindset of always remembering, and as each year 9/11 that date occurs, we should remember and take that time to remember those that lost loved ones. A lot of us were blessed and fortunate not to lose anyone, and some of us did know people that or lost some parts of our family, but we definitely need to remember that day and don't take it for granted.
Okay, all right. And Emerald, what would you like to say?
I feel like it shouldn't just be on certain days that we remember those values.
That's good.
Okay.
We have Memorial Day where we remember those that are lost but not forgotten. We have 9/11. How many days do we have? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where we have to remember these things, and is it enough? Why can't we just roll through it and remember the values that bring us together and that keep us together? Because with that level of humanity in front of us, I feel it'll make a huge difference in society as a whole. And not just here in this country, but overall, globally.
Okay. And Tanasha?
Well, I would like to read a little excerpt from a poem from a friend of mine that is commemorating this day. It's called Somewhere Up There, and A Voice from the Rubble by M. Quinn, Michael Gwynn. This is just an excerpt. Tired and weary, my heart grew from the weight, wondering when and what would be my fate. I watched the reaper grim is his reply. This was not the way I wanted to die. But the air grew thin, chills moved like wind. Fear shattered hope from the terrible within. There was hardly any light, I could barely cope. As walls around me collapsed, so did my hopes. Still I heard you digging with all your might. I heard you, working night, day, and night. I tried to hold on, I tried to fight, but my spirit weakened, crawled towards the light. So that's just an excerpt, and that is from the perspective of someone being saved and, from the firefighters. Okay. So it is something to still remember.
Yes, yes. All right, so there you have it. I want to thank every one of you for coming out and being a part of this show. EK, Emerald, Tanasha, all of you just being able to share your personal experiences of just remembering 9/11 as we celebrate and then just take a moment just to be able to reminisce on all of the things that did occur on that one particular day. So much happened in one day. It was a lot, it really, really was. And to our viewers, I want to thank everyone for watching this as well. Until next time, let's continue to talk, let's listen, and let's love. Thank you once again. God bless.